Hey everyone, what's up? How you doing? Jonathan Lipp here from the Big Apple Film Festival. Once again, thank you all for being part of our conferences today. So we're talking about story structure, primarily focused on short films. So we have Michael Pickney, who has extensive experience as a filmmaker. His film, You're Nobody Till Somebody Kills You, was distributed by Lionsgate. He's also worked as an assistant director on many films and shows, Inside Man, Precious. Um, he's worked as an assistant director on shows like Law and Order and Broad City. We have Jim Fagan, who's written, produced, directed for Comedy Central, Comedy Originals. And we have Ali Keller with us, who has had extensive experience in theater and now moving into the world of film. So let me begin by asking our speakers to tell us a bit about their background. So we'll start with Michael. How you doing?
Good. My name is Michael Pinkney. Some people call me Boogie. Long story how I got that name. I started as an intern, moved up the ranks as a production assistant, then became an AD, worked with Spike for maybe 15 years. So that's how I cut my teeth before I transitioned into writing and directing, and happy to be here.
Cool. I'll go to Jim. Hey, Jim. How are you?
Hey, nice to meet you folks. Nice to see everybody. Like Ali, I came up originally through theater. I got my master's in theater directing, and then quickly realized that that wasn't exactly the medium I wanted to work through. So spent past 10 years working my way up through TV, worked at a bunch of networks on bunches of pilots and things like that, as a producer, as a writer, as an assistant director, and finally kind of landed on a Comedy Central late night show, The Opposition with Jordan Klepper, working as one of the lead producers there, getting to direct the talent on screen a lot, having a good time doing that. And all along throughout this journey, working with my production group, Collective New York Picture Company, with Ali, and then with my partners, Matt and Zach, who aren't here today, but are big parts of our film. And just, yeah, did a ton of self-producing to get to do while doing all the fun assistant work that helps us climb the ladder to make our own stuff that we were passionate about, and finally culminating in this film. So yeah, good to be here.
All right, thank you. And Ali, how about yourself? How are you?
Good, how are you? I started in theater, like Jim said, and we actually met doing a bunch of Live for Lincoln Center theatrical productions. So a lot of my assistant work was in both theatrical things, but also like filmed theater for television. So I got sort of a strange education, a smattering of things here and there. And then I realized that you don't really get paid in the theater very much. So if you plan on making art and also a living, you have to kind of come up with different ways to do that. And one of that was film. And I happened to call Jim right as Zero Issue was becoming a thing, and forced him to get coffee with me. And I think the email literally said, "Jim, can you please explain film, the industry, to me?" And wound up getting a job on Zero Issue, and then sort of forging my own path as an indie producer that now coincides with my theatrical work too. So it's a fun.
All right. So
work.
First, I just want to add, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to start putting them into the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we can. So just start typing away in the Q&A box. But let me start first with an overall question here. In terms of story structure, you all have short films in the festival. Michael's film is Roundtable, and Jim and Ali's film is called Zero Issue. So we'll start with Michael. What would you say are some of the key elements in terms of story structure when developing a short film? With features, I think maybe it's perhaps a bit more obvious, but with shorts, maybe it could be a little more challenging to fit something in, you know, characterization, climaxes, conclusions, all within 10, 12, 15, 20 minutes. What would you say are some of the key strategies for that? We'll start with Michael, thanks. I think it's on mute. Yeah, you got to unmute, yeah.
Right. Because I came from the world of an assistant director, you know, I can't help but, even when I'm starting to write a short, to think logistically. So, you know, I typically even before I start story structure, I want to keep it under 15 pages, because I want to, you can kind of get the idea within those parameters, and you can kind of, have an indie short that's not going to kill your pockets, kill your cast, and kill your crew. So just a, typical beginning, middle, and end, but just someone that we can follow and getting in and out of a scene quickly. You can get a lot of information. The audience is really sophisticated. You don't have to explain everything. You don't have to see them walk up the stairs to the apartment. They can walk right into the apartment. So to me, it's kind of, doing a lot of shorthand to really communicate to the audience, knowing that they kind of understand what you're trying to do, and just making sure every scene is, is necessary. Every scene is important. Every scene moves the story forward, and not just because it's cool, it's a great shot, and just really getting out of trying to, not create great art, but just tell a great story, and the art will come. So, and minimize 3 characters, I don't, it's hard to restrict, us writers, but I think it's important, for people writing short films to kind of understand how it all works together, and not to be so caught up in it having to be this way, because the main goal is to shoot the film eventually.
All right, Michael, by the way, and I'm going to ask each of you this as well. Can you tell us just a brief synopsis of Roundtable, which is screening here?
And Roundtable is a makeshift meeting with the Black community. It kind of it was taken from Dave Chappelle's TV show, when he had, different people representing, a woke person in the community, a ratchet person in the community. So you have 15 people at a table. It's kind of a mixture of 12 angry men, but it's 12 people in one room having a conversation about the things that everyone else, that are representing their part of the community is doing wrong, and how they need to fix it. So with one day, it was 12 actors around a table, representing a portion of the Black community, and having a satirical conversation, if those people actually existed.
Okay. All right. So, Jim, your thoughts on story structure for a short film, and tell us a little about the Zero issue.
Well, I'll first say that for story structure, I should have started out by calling Michael. We should have had a chat, and I should have learned all the things we shouldn't have tried to do before we started out. So Zero issue, it is a large short film. It's 30 minutes long. We have elaborate credits, so it gets up to about 33, 34 minutes. And it is a superhero mockumentary. And it follows independent superheroes at a festival trying to cut their teeth and get recognition so that they can go fight and defend the big city, which in this case is Albany, New York. So it's comedy. It's one of the first of its kind, and it was a huge challenge. Although there are some common themes between what we had to do to get it to a place where it could be a short. We had to do some world building in order to establish everything we wanted to establish for this. I agree. It's much more sensible to do a courtroom drama. Everybody has seen so many courtroom dramas. Once you're in the courtroom, you don't have to establish what the rule of law is. We had to kind of make it so everybody understood that this is a superhero world, this is a festival, this is a small town. We had to do a lot of introducing. It helped us that we were a mockumentary, so we could just sit people down and have them tell some of that stuff straight to camera. But we also had to, it was 30 minutes, but it could have been a feature. We had to go through a lot of rewrites. We had to eliminate whole plot lines for characters that we needed to write because we needed to learn more about this world. But then we were like, well, this movie's not about you, sorry. And we had to pluck them out. And we had to rely a lot on our influences as well. We knew that Documentary Now, which was a big influence on us, got their mockumentaries in full in 22 minutes or so every episode to fill out full seasons. And we were like, damn it, we can too. And we came close. So for us, it was more like a, that Michelangelo thing when you have the big block of marble and you're just trying to chip away till you get to what you want. We had way too much clay, way too much marble, and we were just trying to lop off large chunks until we could see a manageable short film somewhere underneath all of that. And I think we got there. We're proud of where we got, but it is, boy, oh boy, we didn't save our pockets and we killed our cast. And that's why Allie is laughing and nodding, and our crew. But it was a labor of love. Yeah. So we got there.
Allie, what do you feel are some of the most essential elements of a short story with the making of Zero Issue, and perhaps you've done short work in theater as well?
Yeah, I've done short work in theater. I've done a lot of shorts since Zero Issue also, which has been great. And I think from a producing standpoint, obviously you're not coming up with the story on the page with people. A lot of times I'm joining teams once the script is final or almost final. And I think for me, the storytelling process really starts whether it's something that's a little bit more logistically simple, like Michael's film, or 1,000 people running around in a town upstate New York in leotards, like our film. The storytelling for me really starts by reading the script and seeing if I get a clear sense of what it is, which I did for Zero Issue. I feel like I immediately got the mockumentary tone, and even being more of a superhero novice than the rest of the team, could hang on the humor and get all the jokes. But the other part of storytelling that I think is really important as a producer signing onto a team is listening to the team then talk about the script that you just read. It's really important that as you're sitting in a position like mine, where you're helping people make those sort of crucial decisions about time, about money, about things that, you know, somebody's got to kill off their baby because we just don't have the resources to do it all. It's really important that you can remind the team of their very clear vision, because at a certain point, directors got to worry about directing and actors have to worry about that. And you're the only one left in the room to be like, I know everything seems important. I want you to have everything too. But at the end of the day, it's got to be this or this based on the story on the page, based on the story of what you're saying. I think this is the call. So for me, it's like story on the page first, and then story from the team, and making sure we're all in the same place.
All right. So we have a question here in terms of your story structure. Mohammed asks, do you think about your setting first, or do you first come up with the plot, the characters, and then the setting after? So Michael, you want to start? No, just let, yeah.
Typically, I kind of put the cart before the horse a lot. So because I'm actually, I feel like I'm a director who writes. So I'm gonna think about the setting, and I'm gonna think about if I have access to a helicopter or if I have access to a courtroom. So I'm gonna think about, and that's gonna inform the story that I want to tell. Because I think it's important to not restrict yourself as a writer, director, out the gate. So I'd rather have a script that's shootable versus a script that's amazing, that's on the shelf collecting dust, because it's unrealistic. And I think that, we want to make movies, we want to tell stories, so we want to get to the finish line. So I think, so for me, I definitely think about the setting, and how that could help the story.
All right. Jim and Allie?
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, Allie is, I'm similar to Michael. I'm a director who writes. Allie's really a prolific writer as well as a producer, so playwright and screenwriter. I'm much less precise in my, in my beginnings. I try to empty my brain and invite some stuff to start happening. I go for runs and try to wait and see if the song I'm running to starts giving me a nugget. I usually start with the nugget of something, like, with this film, we started with the nugget of, we wanted to talk about people struggling to be great, to achieve greatness. And that was the small, and we were like, we want it to be about superheroes. We started with that kind of small nugget and hope to build bit by bit from there. It would be hard. I think that starting with setting could be really smart if you're saying, depending on the setting you have, I have access to this one really cool thing. What kind of stories start here? That's just a different kind of nugget to begin with. Yeah, I think it's much less precise for me. It's just, waiting for a story I want to tell, and then I start trying to problem solve.
Yeah, I think for me, because I started in theater and went to film, in order for my brain to actually switch gears, I think I don't start to write anything until I know a great deal about the environment. And part of that is because I think all great stories are character driven, but you know, I don't want it to be a play on screen. So I try to strip myself of what dialogue is in theater before I start writing a screenplay. But I think the most useful thing to remember about that stuff is these things go hand in hand. I think Dale would come across as a very different kind of character if he was at a superhero festival that resembled something that was as prestigious as Comic-Con and behaved the same way as if he was acting the way he's acting in like a much smaller indie festival the way he is in Zero Issue. I think environment, it tells you a lot about the character as well. So I think those things are very much linked. But before I write, I try to imagine the environment because that helps me tell the story through action. But I think they should be linked together to tell a coherent story.
All right, thank you. So Julio is with us. Julio actually has a film in our festival called All Shadows, which is screening as part of our drive-in festival on Sunday. Our drive-in screenings are actually happening tomorrow and Sunday. So anyway, Julio's film is called All Shadows. He's a first-time writer-director. So he says, as a first-time writer-director of my short film, All Shadows, I found character structure challenging since in such a short format, I needed to make sure every character would resonate with the audience. How do you come to terms with or structure the making of memorable characters for your short films? So I think really what you're saying is, how do you make the audience care about characters in such a short period of time? So
I have a thought that jumps into mind with that, and it's such a cop-out. But it has to do with your actors. I mean, you have to put it in there. It has to be in the page. But a unique perspective that I think I have from Zero Issue is we have such an ensemble cast, and we had actors who did the work and dove in and fleshed out their characters. And if something didn't feel right in the dialogue, they brought it up. Or if something was, and so God casting is important when it comes to making sure that every little side character who walks in, you know, bring in actors if you can who are overqualified for the one line you want them to do, because they will, A, if they're a good actor, fight for every bit of screen time they can get, and B, you will just believe in them and they will flesh it out more than you ever could in the scripting. So that's my cop-out quick answer.
all right, Michael and Allie?
I mean, I think like Jim said, I mean, I think, you know, we're all painting this picture, you know, and the actors are part of this painting, you know, so we give them the tools, you know, and sometimes I've had actors just bring so much life to a character that I didn't, we can't do it on the page, but to a certain point, you know, then it's up to us to kind of drive them and direct them in a way to really make a memorable character. So I think, you know, it's you just make an authentic character, you know, write good dialogue. And then like Jim says, cast a great actor, and then the magic happens.
Yeah, Allie?
Yeah, I will echo those sentiments. I think casting can 100% make or break something. If you're casting the wrong person, even if it's beautifully written on the page, it's going to be real weird when you watch it later. And a great actor can 100% elevate your work. I think if it's something you're worried about on the page, or you're worried that the base for a great actor isn't necessarily there, hand it off to someone and ask them for everything they don't understand about why this character is doing what they're doing. Because an audience can't care about a character that they don't understand. And they don't have to agree with it. They don't have to like it. They don't have to want that character to get the thing that they're after, but they have to understand why that character thinks it's important and their stakes. And that's what makes the basis in order to hand something off to an actor that they can just like run away with and like make it incredible.
Yeah, there's so many great short films you can, you know, take a look at to get some ideas. Duplass Brothers' first short, you know, I definitely cared about those characters just within a few minutes. Michael's, you know, Spike Lee's first short film, Joe's Bedside Barber, We Cut Heads. Again, you care about the characters in the first, you know, couple minutes. James Wan, the first Saw film, the short film, I was very invested right away. So there's a lot of short films you can definitely check out also to get some ideas. There was a question over here in the chat box. What qualities or personality traits of a director is relied upon when making a short film? Anybody want to jump in on that one?
I will jump in. As not a director, I shall start. I think for me, for signing on to a team, it's something I pay very close attention to when I'm meeting a new person to decide for the first time. A director has to care about their project, and they have to care about the project outside of themselves. It's really important. And I think as much as you can, if you're somebody who's in the position I am, where you're, again, interviewing for something or deciding if you want to work with someone, I think strangely, it's going to sound like a very weird quality, but I think grace is the most important thing that a director can have. And I don't mean like gracefully he walks through the room. I mean like he or she or they or whoever it is somebody who can roll with the punches and understands that their headspace and their tone affects the room, and it makes the people feel safe to do their job and speak up and pitch things, or it doesn't. Because at the end of the day, like, they set the tone, they set the vibe, they lead the team, and like, it doesn't matter how amazingly talented everyone is, if they're not trusted to handle all of the fires that will happen on set and on production and everything else, then it's going to be a really hard process. So I think that sort of just like ability to check your ego and really focus on everybody coming together is the most important thing, at least for me. Not doing the artistic job of a director, that's the thing I look for when I sign on to work with somebody.
And Michael, can you actually jump into this one as well? Because we're talking about personality traits of director. Having worked with Spike Lee for 15 some odd years and so many films, maybe you can speak a little bit about traits of a director that in making.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I've worked with so many directors as an AD, which kind of informed me as a director. And some styles, everybody's style is different, but one of the most important things I think is just a good listener, whether you listen to the crew or you listen to the cast. I worked on films where the director's not really listening, and the actor has to come and talk to the AD about something because they don't have clarity and they don't even have the relationship enough with the director to have a real conversation. So, I think listening is important. With Spike is definitely preparedness. He just knowing what he wants to do and being prepared and just preparing everybody else. That's something that I learned that he's really into. He's really into. He knows he's the first one there. We used to have to beat him there. If it's a 6 a.m. call and why is the director there at 5:30? The trucks aren't even there yet, but that's how he is. He's so prepared and he's ready. He's ready to go. So that's definitely something that, because the director is the captain of the ship. So if the director is ready to go in and put their heart into it, then everybody else, I think, will follow.
All right. And Jim, what about you? Working with Comedy Central as a director and having worked with other directors, what do you think some of the key traits are?
Gosh, that's all good stuff. I think that you have to take ownership for sure. I don't mean to say you don't have ownership, but you have to. The best directors check their ego a bit. The death to a production is when the director's not open to ideas, not open to suggestion, because they need to have control of some kind over that, which is not to say that they don't have a clear idea of where this needs to get and they aren't able to say, yes, thank you so much, but no, or, hey, why are we 5 behind, or whatever. They sort of need to, I think preparedness is a big one, because you need to have done all the work ahead of time so that you can stay in the moment and keep your antenna up and be aware of everything going on. On an indie set that was the size of ours, occasionally realizing we're on day 2, 14th hour of shooting, and we might all be sitting around thinking someone else is about we're waiting on somebody else, and the director has to be like, what are we waiting on, everybody? Let's go and bring it together. So it's kind of a vision, which is not to say some kind of like magical or mystical quality, just this idea that you can see the film, you can see what it's going to become, and you are constantly looking around and saying, are we getting there? Is this going to get us there? And what are the building blocks I need to keep and put into place to get there? I think that's the soup of it. Hard for me to say, to be honest, but I think that's it.
We have Michael Smallwood with us. He's a screenwriter, and he was a winner in our screenplay competition for his script tonight and maybe tomorrow. And he has a business question for you. How do you get investors excited about investing in a short project when the path for short films is so much more narrow than features? Anybody want to jump in on this one? Investing in a short.
It's hard. It's hard. And I haven't done a lot of like investor reach out for features, so I can't say comparatively. I'm sure it's equally as difficult in wildly different ways. I think it's easier if your short is a proof of concept for something, because that's a little bit of an easier sell. There's more money to be made down the line, those kinds of things. You know, an actor with clout that's signed on is going to be super helpful to get people excited. It will also help festivals get excited. It will help everyone at every part of the process get excited if you have some kind of access to a famous person who wants to do your movie. And those are like disheartening answers that it's hard and famous people help you. But I think with outreach of any kind, whether it be people you're signing on for the team or trying to get money, or if you're wind up going the fundraising route, which we did for Zero Issue and I've done on other films, it's your pitch and coming across not only what your passion is for this project, but why somebody else should care. Why this is, if you don't usually invest in short films, this is the one you should invest in. Here's why. Because it's going to be great. It's a new thing. It's my thing. This is why you're going to care about it. This is why everyone else is going to care about it. And it's very like hard as a writer to be like, now you are a salesperson. You sit in a room and write by yourself, but go forth and sell your, essence to a person accurately. But it's a really important part of the job. And I think as hard as it is for short films, like definitely continually try to do it, because then you'll have that skill banked when you are trying to pitch pilots, when you are trying to pitch features, it has a little bit more of a bigger market.
Okay, thank you. So Daryl has a question. Daryl says, I'm currently writing a short film that must be 10 pages or less, but I'm having a problem narrowing down the theme, what exactly I want to focus on in the script, because in this story, there are so many different ways I can go and themes I can address. I'm struggling with either narrowing the theme down or figuring out how to tie the themes together without muddying the film too much, especially since it's a short. So the question is, have any of you ever experienced that, and how did you go about resolving this issue? So we'll start with Jim. Maybe connect it somehow to the development of Zero Issue and perhaps other shorts you made.
Sure. I mean, in the case of Zero Issue, we had, now listen, we didn't sniff 10 pages at any point, so take my advice with a grain of salt. We finished with 20 pages and we shot way more than we needed. But we finished with 20 pages and we started with 50. So we did cull it quite a bit. And here's what's tricky. We did it by focusing on the theme we were going to tell, and by that I mean the story we wanted to tell. We were saying, okay, whose story is this? Maybe instead of trying to think of it in terms of like, what's the grand arching theme I want to tell, whose story is it? If you've got a bunch of characters fighting for page time and screen time eventually, which is what we had, we were like, well, who's actually, it's a short, right? So you do want to focus in, even if the answer in your case is, the town is the story or the whatever, but whose story is it? And once you have that person, what journey are they going to go on? And if other things are not serving that, they got to go, or they got to get smaller. And they're great for your packet for when your short wins a bunch of accolades and someone says, what's next for this? And you're like, well, it's a whole, you know, mini series, or it's a film, or it's a whatever. Then you bring out all this other stuff. The other thing would just be, you know, it's the same side of the coin, but what story are you trying to tell? What's important to you? When the final credits roll on your movie, what do you, and you turn to an audience member and they say, God, I love that because now I'm thinking about this. What do you want them to say to you? And then focus on that. Is that word salad or helpful?
Thanks. Jack had a question about the post-festival world. So I'll start with Ali. What are your plans? Well, what is the market for short films? Is there an opportunity here? So with Zero Issue, after the festival run, do you see a market for short films? And then afterwards, Michael, if you could talk a bit about, you know, your plans with Roundtable short film distribution.
Yeah, I think we are still very much early on in the process of submitting to festivals and hopefully having a very long festival run. But I think looking ahead to that, there's kind of a market for short films. Like there are, in the ways that, like I said before, you're not going to make a ton of money off your short film, but there are definitely ways that, like, you want to sell concept, you want to do a longer version of this. If it's a proof of concept and things do well on the festival circuit, you can reach out to investors who want to invest in a longer piece to be like, look, all of these people loved this so much in short form, you know, give me the money to do the feature, give me the money to do the series. And that's part of the sell. There's also things like Shorts TV and Criterion and putting your short on Amazon and things like that that you can look to as well. But I think, and you know, Jim and I joke all the time about turning this into a feature. I would love to continue working with this. I hope that happens in one way or another. But I think the best you can hope for when you go into making a short film is that it's going to be great. It's going to be well received. It's going to be seen by a lot of people. And the fortunate and unfortunate reality of the aftermath is you have totally no control on who's going to pick it up, who's going to want to do it. And I think for Zero Issue, for us, it's like, we want people to see it. We want people to laugh. We would love to continue making this in some way, and we hope that happens, but also it's our work and it's out there, and hopefully we get more work off of it. Because it's just as much a calling card for you as it is a piece that you want to go on and have its own life somehow.
Okay. Michael, how about you? Do you have plans for Roundtable after the festival?
Well, we talked about, I mean, you know, similar to what Ali said, you know, being able to use it in other areas. That's what it is for me. You know, it's typically, it has to be another life, whether it's part of a feature, whether it's a part of a proof of concept for a series. I mean, that's just how I feel about doing shorts at this point. You know, there has to be a longer life. You know, you have to be able to use what you've done for the potential of somebody, especially if you want to get money from someone. There has to be they want to know how much money they can make. They typically don't care that much about the idea. That's great, but that's not their sweet spot. Their sweet spot is, what's the return of interest? How can I make my money back? So even the potential of it getting picked up or funded and being a feature, you know, it's just about having a longer life and how do you monetize it? It's like, that's what we're creators, but it's also still a business. So we really it's important to think in that way, you know, especially in this stage. We're all doing this, and this is ultimately how we eat. We're not in college anymore, so we think about, you know, the life of a project typically.
Okay. Timothy had a question. How important is having a strong theme expressed in your shorts? So maybe, Jim, you could speak to this in terms of Zero Issue, the themes.
I guess it's critical in the sense that theme is another word for story. I mean, you need to know what story you want to tell. You know, if what you're talking about is like interpretation, I mean, I think as long as you tell a story that you feel good about with a strong beginning, middle, end, then people can interpret 8,000 different themes out of it, or, you know, it kind of depends on how literal you want to be or how figurative or whatever. But I think that if I'm judging your question correctly, it's critical that you know what you want to say what you want to get out of what you're saying. So that when it's done, that's an outcome you can control. We're talking a lot about like selling things, and it's important and it's our livelihood, but it's outside of your control a lot of the times if someone's going to come, but it's 100% within your control if you've said what you wanted to say. And so I think that's critical. Otherwise, you're sort of chasing the wrong end of it and trying to reverse engineer it. Start with what you want to say, and hopefully you'll make something worthwhile, I guess.
Michael, your film Roundtable has some strong themes. Did you have the theme in mind first and then wrote the story, or was it sort of the opposite?
Well, I was a gun for hire. I didn't write it. I just directed it. I worked with the actor writer before. You know, he wrote the script. He sent it to me, and I really liked the script. And we talked about, how to, shoot it. But I was definitely familiar with the theme and the topics, so it resonated with me.
Okay. Jason asks about character arcs. Can you speak a bit about how you go about constructing the character arcs for short films in particular, which I guess is kind of similar to the earlier question, how do we sort of make people care about these characters, and now how do we see an arc happen all within a very short period of time? So anybody want to?
Yeah, I think I can be quick on this. I think a good cheat code for you to use on your script or on yourself is has my character changed? What's changed? Either has something that's already, in our case, I think something that's already been there, always been there underneath, has come to the surface and has consumed this character, and now that's what that character is. Or, decisions that they've made on screen have led to a change, or has the conversation changed? Has there been a resolution to that? That I think, if that change has happened, then there's an arc there. It's literally, by definition, like something, there's been movement. I think what you don't want to end up with is a predetermined outcome for your story or your character at the very beginning, and nothing, if different things happened, nothing would be different about the outcome, then you're not going to have much of an arc in your main character.
What about you, Ali, having come from theater background?
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure theater people will be mad at me for saying this, but I think it is much harder to give characters really well-rounded arcs in film than it is in theater. And I think that's just the nature of like the different tools at your disposal. I think you can get away with a slightly sloppier arc in theater than you can in film to get your point across, to get people to invest really, really quickly in what they want and watch things happen. And I think the trick, or one of the tricks in film, is don't get caught up in making something super complicated. All I need to know is who this person is, what they care about, what they're trying to do, and then I'm gonna watch to see if they're successful. And like Jim said, like watch for that change. So try as much as you can, if you're a writer who goes into things thematically or not, or whatever, as you're outlining, as you're conceptualizing stuff, make sure you're telling the cleanest, simplest version of the story you want to tell, because that's how you're going to leave that space for me to be able to get to know your character and see them change throughout.
Michael, your film Roundtable's very character driven. Were you intrigued by the arcs when you first read the script? Did you know right away this is,
Yeah, I mean, I was intrigued by the arcs because they were, kind of exaggerated, which I thought was really interesting. And it was this world that kind of exists in our head, but doesn't really exist. So I thought that was fascinating. And it was a lot easier to have conversations, the characters to have conversations about things in this world that we're thinking about, but we don't have. So I was really fascinated with that aspect of it too. That's why I'm really interested in continuing the film as a series and see where it goes and kind of see what happens to these characters once they leave that room. What are their lives like when they leave that room? So I'm really interested in seeing where that goes.
All right. Yeah, it's interesting. I was just having a conversation with someone recently, whereas, sometimes when making a short film, it can be challenging to find those character arcs in such a short period of time. And we were saying that sometimes the simplest way to understand it is just watch some old TV shows that are 30 minutes long, like some of the old sitcoms. And, you know, it's interesting. Those stories are maybe 18, 20 minutes long because, you know, you have the commercial breaks. But in that period, you know, the great shows, the classic shows, they always had a great arc. Something always happened. Someone always changed by the end. And it's just a sort of a simple way of understanding how these characters change. Okay, we have a question here from a film student. He says, hi, I'm Aiden. I wrote and produced Wild Wild Us screening in the student short block at Big Apple. I'm currently prepping to direct my first short. As a first-time director on set, how do you manage the leadership role while also being honest about what you don't know? That's a great question, yeah. How do you focus on being a leader while at the same time being aware that there's a lot of things you don't know? Yeah, anybody want to jump in on this one?
I mean, I feel it's in the relationship between your DP, your AD. I think that's where, you know, that leadership is going to come from, and it's a team effort. You know, so I think you lean on the people that know a little bit more than you at that time. You know the vision, but you don't have to know lens size. You know, you don't have to know what scene I should shoot first logistically, and what, you know. So I feel like you lean on the people, you lean on your team, the people that you hire, and hopefully they'll guide you and support you, and it's an open conversation. You know, it's a team effort. You know, so you don't have, you know, it's kind of like leading from the second chair. You can lead by not leading.
Nice. Aiden also had a question for you, Michael. What suggestions, because you've worked so much in the indie film scene in New York City on the shows and the films, he asked what suggestions for first steps would you give for indie filmmaking in New York City, getting into the film industry in New York City? Any suggestions there?
Suggestions for shooting in New York City?
Getting into the film industry in New York City.
Oh, it depends on what you want to do. I mean, you know, just network. You know, come to the Big Apple Film Festivals. You know, network with other filmmakers. You know, typically people, you know, your peers, whether they're PAs or whatever they're doing, they have aspirations of doing something else. So, you know, you're going to grow with them. You want to direct a PA next to you, he probably wants to be a DP. So it's definitely, sometimes we try to network up, when sometimes it's just as important if we network across. You know, so the people in your circle, you know, just grow with them.
Okay, thank you. And Luca has a question. We'll go to Jim and Allie for this one. Again, being a 19-year-old director who's just gotten a short film into the drama block of this festival, what advice could you give me and other young filmmakers trying to get into this industry? Jim, any thoughts on that?
Well, it's a good long journey that you're already on. So you don't have to think about yourself as like, how do I start? You've already started. And I'm sure that everybody on this call would agree we're still on it, on our own version of it. You will achieve goals that will make you feel really good. And then you'll have new goals that will. So your first goal starting out, you know, might be, as Michael was just saying, I just want to get a good PA gig on a set. And then I want to do a really good job there so that when somebody asks me what it is you want to do, why are you here? What do you want to do? I have an answer, and they are putting it up. You know, you build it a little bit at a time. You keep goals that are achievable for yourself at all times and goals that are big swings at all times. So you say, you know, this year I want to write 5 scripts. You can have control over whether or not that happens. At the same time, you can say, I want to shoot something and win a festival. That can be a goal that is more extended, that you have less control over 100%. You know, you can make the best movie in the world. It's a subjective process going through the accolades part of it. So you sort of want to have that mixture of big swings, little swings, and just be patient with yourself. You will get there. It is not actually that mysterious. You work hard. The people you work with will think you're awesome. They will have you work on other stuff, and it will happen. You'll build it slowly, and it'll happen. And then all of a sudden one day something big will happen, and it will look like it happened overnight, but you will look back and realize that you've been doing it the whole time.
Right. Yeah, very true. All right, we have time for one last question. It's actually for Allie, and this is actually a question, interestingly enough, I was going to ask you. The question is, can you describe the difference between writing dialogue for theater and for film?
Yes, again, writing dialogue for theater is your main storytelling tool. It is what you have. There are brilliant directors for theater that can help guide your audience's eye to be looking at the right things, but you have absolutely no control over somebody who looks in their purse in the middle of the show. You have no control over people's eyes, but they hear things the entire time. So the story's got to come through that first and foremost. And for film, that's not the case. And I think the best advice, which is, old advice and cliche advice, but it's your film should be able to exist as a silent film. If I put your film on mute, I should be able to get essentially 99% of your story. And for me, as much as it pains my playwright heart when I go to write a script, I write it silently first. That's why I think about environments and think about that character action first. And then I go back and I allow myself to go in and put in the details that are not going to come out through action. Because that's sort of your last play, your last little piece of storytelling. Because everything else film is visual. So the visuals have got to tell that story first. So it's almost kind of like the last thing I personally worry about. But that's because if I do it first, I have written a play and it's not, I have to go silent film first, but that's the best advice I got when I started screenwriting.
Yeah, that's great. It's like Martin Scorsese's first short, The Big Shave, right? It's like silent, but it's telling this whole crazy story. All right, so if any of the participants here want to perhaps try to keep in touch with you somehow and share some updates on what they're working on and maybe ask some advice about anything, is there a way to keep in touch with you? Social media, website, email, anything perhaps you guys can recommend? Michael?
My website is boogievision.com, and all my social media is boogievision. Twitter, Instagram, everything is boogievision. So you can find me anywhere.
Great. Michael Pinckney, Boogie Vision is the company, and the website is boogievision.com. All right, awesome. And Jim? Oh, I think you're on mute there.
This is such a nerdy loserish answer. Hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm on there, and it's the place where I keep a lot of this stuff. My personal email gets overwhelmed with kids' school stuff and everything. So yeah, so I'm Jim Fagan on LinkedIn. Come find me, and we'll hang out there. I think my website's jimfagan.me, and you can get in contact with me that way as well, or find my liberal rantings on Twitter. So that's what I got for you.
All right. Allie?
My website is alliekellerplaywright.com. You can find me on Instagram at alliekeller47. If you happen to stumble on the New York Picture Instagram, emails, Facebook, that will also be me. I am also the person messaging and posting from there. So you can check those out as well.
Cool. All right. So just so everybody knows, the festival is taking place over the course of this weekend from November 13th to the 15th. We do have the films screening virtually, roundtable, as well as a zero issue or screening virtually. And also zero issue actually is part of our drive-in screenings as well. The drive-in screenings are happening at Demarest Farms in New Jersey tomorrow and on Sunday. So if you're in the area, feel free to come down and check out some of the drive-in screenings. We do have more panels and conferences taking place over the course of the weekend. And if you are available at 2 p.m., we have an interesting panel called Making a Film in Quarantine, which is something that people are trying to just figure out right now. We're going to have John Gray, who is the creator of the CBS show The Ghost Whisperer. He's also directed a series of films with actors such as Sissy Spacek, Natasha Richardson, and Bancroft, amongst many others. We have Kim Wayans with us as well. Kim is an actress, comedian, sister of the Wayans brothers. We have Henry Cizerni, who's a Canadian actor. We have Jason Kravitz and Tim Griffin, who are also actors, are all part of this panel on making a film in quarantine. So if you're available at 2 p.m., come check it out. So thank you very much to Michael. Thank you to Jim. Thank you to Allie. Really appreciate you being here. And thank you all the participants for joining. So we'll see you all soon. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye.